Picture a brilliantly lit operating theater.
Okay.
Like the only sound in the room is just that steady, rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor.
Right. Highly stressful.
Yeah, and you have this team of medical professionals in sterile gowns, masks tightly fitted, and they are leaning intensely over a patient with just, zero margin for error.
Yeah, absolute precision.
Exactly. Now take that exact life or death discipline, that extreme precision, and drop it into like a middle school.
It sounds wild when you put it like that.
It really does. Because today, we aren't actually talking about medicine. We're taking the rigorous protocols of a surgical team and applying them to the world of safeguarding.
Which is such a fascinating crossover.
It is. We're doing a deep dive into a source document titled, What a DSL Can Learn from a Surgeon. And just for anyone unfamiliar, a DSL is a designated safeguarding lead.
Right. Basically, the person in an organization or a school who is directly responsible for protecting vulnerable people.
Exactly. So our mission today is to uncover how the exact same communication protocols that prevent catastrophic surgical disasters can actually be used to protect people in incredibly complex human crises.
Yeah, because the core mechanics of managing a high-stakes crisis, they translate remarkably well across totally different disciplines.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because if you are listening to this right now, you might be thinking, I don't work in a hospital, and I am not a social worker, so why is this relevant to me?
Right. Why should they care?
Exactly. But whether you are managing a corporate team, or handling a PR crisis, or just trying to navigate a high-pressure situation in your community, understanding how top-tier experts mitigate risk it's a universal superpower.
Oh, absolutely. It fundamentally changes how you approach stress.
It really does. So let's get into it. Where do we even start with this comparison?
Well, the foundational insight from our source material really grounds this entire concept. It's this profound realization that the surgical field accepted, years ago.
Which is what?
That mistakes are rarely technical. They are almost always failures of communication.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when an outcome is disastrous in an operating room, it is usually not because a surgeon's hand slipped.
Right.
It's because someone in the room didn't say the right thing at the crucial moment, or, an assumption just went completely unchallenged.
That honestly reframes the entire idea of competence. Like, the failure happens in the coordination, not the underlying skill.
Exactly. Think about a critical safeguarding moment. So say, a serious disclosure from a child, or a high-risk concern about a vulnerable adult that involves multiple agencies.
Right, very high stakes.
The professional handling it almost always knows the law. They know their field inside and out.
Yeah, they're trained for it.
But the situation deteriorates because of how the team prepares and communicates under that sudden, massive stress.
Which brings us to the moments just before the action actually begins. Because in the surgical world, there is a very specific ritual before anyone even picks up a scalpel, right?
Yes, the pre-op briefing.
The pause before the first cut.
Exactly. In a high-performing operating theater, the entire team literally stops moving.
Like physically stops?
Physically stops. Together, out loud, they confirm the patient's identity, the specific procedure, the known risks, and everybody's specific role.
Wow.
Yeah, everyone speaks so that everyone aligns. It is a mandatory operational standard. You don't skip it.
Nobody skips the pause. But, when we transition that concept over to safeguarding, I feel like it challenges our deepest instincts.
It really does, because that pre-op briefing is just as non-negotiable for a DSL, but the environment makes it so much harder to execute.
How so?
Well, imagine a serious abuse disclosure happens at, say, 3 p.m. on a Friday. A student comes into the office and reveals something deeply concerning.
Okay.
The immediate human instinct, especially for these caring, dedicated professionals, is to just launch into action.
Right, to fix it immediately.
Pick up the phone, intervene, solve the problem right now. Your adrenaline just spikes.
Yeah, you feel that ticking clock, and honestly, pausing feels like you are failing the person sitting right in front of you.
But the strategic reframe from the surgical world is that your response must begin with alignment, not action.
Alignment first.
Always. Before reacting to that complex situation, the internal team needs a briefing. You have to clarify who is leading the response.
Right.
You identify the immediate risks. You align on the next steps, like who is making the phone call to the authorities.
Who is staying in the room to sit with the student?
Exactly. Who is opening a secure file to document the timeline?
It's kind of like trying to navigate a ship through a storm alone versus having a navigator, a captain, and an engineer.
That's a great way to look at it.
Because single-point decision-making in a crisis is just asking to hit an iceberg. Or, I mean, it's like trying to run a Michelin star kitchen during a dinner rush all by yourself.
Oh, that's impossible.
Right. You can't chop the onions, sear the steak, run the pass, and plate the dessert at the exact same time. You need a brigade system where everyone owns a specific station.
Yes, exactly.
But I have to ask, why is it so incredibly tempting for leaders to bypass their team and just, try to handle the entire crisis themselves?
Because in a state of elevated stress, delegation feels like a delay.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah, when your heart rate is up and cortisol is just flooding your system,
Yeah,
be taking 3 minutes to discuss who's going to do what, it feels like a waste of precious time.
You just want to act.
Right, the leader's brain tricks them into thinking it will be faster and safer if I just do this myself.
But surgeons know that's a trap.
They know that acting without alignment creates uncoordinated, chaotic speed. You might feel like you are acting faster, but you're actually running blindly into the dark.
Which dramatically increases the risk of a catastrophic error.
Exactly.
Okay, but even if a team is perfectly aligned in the hallway, the moment they step into the crisis, human biology takes over.
Oh, absolutely.
A team can know exactly what to do, but humans, even the absolute smartest experts in the room, they are entirely fallible under pressure.
And our source material addresses this head-on with a really crucial design principle. Systems must assume human fallibility, not perfection.
Right.
Checklists exist in surgery for a very humble reason. Extreme pressure degrades cognitive ability.
Your brain just doesn't work as well.
No, it doesn't. As complexity increases, human memory becomes wildly unreliable.
It's funny because most organizational systems seem built for how people behave on their absolute best days.
Yes, exactly.
Like they assume you've had a full night's sleep, zero distractions, and just perfect focus.
But checklists are designed for how people behave on their worst days, when they are exhausted, terrified, and totally overwhelmed.
So safeguarding systems need those clear procedures, defined escalation pathways, and step-by-step processes precisely because the people operating them are, well, human.
Exactly. And there is a visceral example in the text about how this plays out with communication. In an operating theater, vague language is lethal.
Right, you can't just guess.
You don't just assume the nurse handed you the correct dosage of a medication, you read it out loud and confirm it.
So apply that to a chaotic school office.
Okay, so a teacher walks in, says, I'm handling the Johnson family situation.
Okay.
Another staff member hears that and assumes handling it means calling Child Protective Services.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right, but the first teacher actually just meant they were calling the parents to arrange a meeting.
Wow. So that one unchecked assumption means a child in danger doesn't get the statutory intervention they need.
Exactly. The professional truth from the text is incredibly stark here. If it is not clearly communicated, it is not safely managed.
So you have to be super explicit, like, I'm making the referral to social services now. Please confirm you are logging the incident report.
Yes, and you have to understand the specific language of your field, too. For instance, knowing the legal definition of the threshold you're dealing with.
Meaning the exact legal point where a concern legally mandates a report to the authorities.
Exactly. You cannot be vague about whether a situation meets that threshold.
Okay, I can hear an objection forming in the listener's mind right now.
Let's hear it.
Dealing with a terrified child or a vulnerable adult in a state of distress, that is a profoundly emotional, delicate event.
Yes, it is.
Doesn't pulling out a rigid checklist and using hyper-explicit, almost militaristic language make the whole process feel, I don't know, too robotic?
It's a very fair question.
Doesn't it destroy the empathy required to help someone who is in pain?
It's a natural concern, but it really misunderstands how our brains process stress. The checklist doesn't replace human empathy. It actively protects it.
Okay, explain that. How does the piece of paper protect empathy?
Think of it this way. The checklist is essentially acting as an external hard drive for your brain.
Oh, I love that.
You offload all that administrative panic onto the paper, so your mental RAM is 100% focused on the human being right in front of you.
Wow, so if you are sitting with a traumatized individual and your prefrontal cortex is just desperately trying to remember the 7 mandatory administrative steps.
And the phone number for the crisis team and the exact wording of the legal threshold?
Right. You are not actually present with that person at all.
Exactly. Your cognitive load is maxed out. The checklist holds the procedure so that you can hold the empathy.
That completely flips the script on how we view bureaucratic processes in a crisis.
It really does.
But a flawless checklist is utterly useless if the culture of the team is broken.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because If you have the best checklist in the world, but a junior team member notices a critical error and is too terrified to point it out to their boss, the system still fails.
Which brings us to the concept of psychological safety.
Right.
In high-performing surgical teams, anyone, from the most senior attending surgeon with 30 years of experience down to the newest surgical technician, can speak up and stop the procedure if they see a risk.
So hierarchy is never allowed to silence a concern.
Never.
The source material is remarkably blunt about this, actually. It states that silence is one of the greatest risks in safeguarding systems.
It's true.
Imagine a 22-year-old newly qualified teacher who notices a strange pattern of behavior with a student. But they think, well, the veteran principal has known this family for a decade. I probably shouldn't rock the boat.
And that hesitation is a massive systemic failure.
Exactly. The culture of the organization has to ensure that junior staff can challenge authority appropriately.
And that uncertainty can be shared without shame. Because if people are afraid of looking foolish for raising a false alarm, they will just wait until the alarm is undeniable.
Which is usually way too late.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? Which naturally leads us to what happens after the immediate fire is put out.
Right, the aftermath.
The crisis has passed, the immediate danger is mitigated. How does a team ensure they don't just repeat the exact same frantic panic the next time it happens?
They borrow another critical tool from the surgical world, the post-op debrief.
Yes.
The surgery doesn't end when the patient is stitched up. After the procedure, the surgical team gathers to reflect. They analyze the timeline, they discuss what went well, and they identify exactly where communication fractured.
There's a line in the text that really stopped me in my tracks.
What was it?
It says, safeguarding systems improve through reflection, not repetition.
That is such a powerful statement.
It makes you realize how many workplaces just, survive a crisis, go home exhausted, and then repeat the exact same disorganized response the next time.
Because without reflection, you aren't actually gaining 10 years of experience. You are just repeating 1 year of experience 10 times.
Wow, yeah.
The debrief is the actual engine of systemic improvement.
But how do you actually conduct a debrief about a highly sensitive, emotional human crisis without it turning into a total witch hunt?
Right, because if someone made a mistake, the instinct is to assign blame.
Exactly.
A blameless debrief requires a fundamental shift in the questions you ask.
Okay, like what?
Instead of asking, why did Sarah forget to call the primary caregiver? A high reliability team asks, why did our system allow a single point of failure?
Oh, that's completely different.
Or they ask, what information was missing that made Sarah's decision seem logical at the time?
So you analyze the environment, the communication pathways, and the cognitive load on the individuals.
Exactly. By removing the threat of personal punishment for honest mistakes, you uncover the actual root causes of the failure.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the document does something very smart halfway through.
Yeah, it shifts gears.
It doesn't just blindly stick to the medical comparison. It pivots and explicitly points out where the surgical analogy hits a brick wall.
It's a very necessary distinction.
There is a whole section analyzing why a crisis manager or a DSL isn't actually a surgeon.
Right, because the people a safeguarding lead is helping aren't anesthetized patients lying perfectly still on a sterile table.
The environment is entirely different.
Completely different.
The text provides this fascinating critical difference table. If you look at the surgeon's world, it is a highly controlled clinical environment.
Right. The procedures, while incredibly complex, are medically standardized.
And the outcomes are relatively immediate. Like the bleeding is clamped, the organ is removed. The primary currency is technical precision.
Now contrast that with the world of a safeguarding professional or a social worker or even a manager dealing with a severe personnel crisis.
It's messy.
It is a messy, unpredictable human environment. The variables are constantly shifting. No two families, no two children, no two crises are exactly alike.
And the outcomes aren't immediate at all. You can't just fix a complex safeguarding situation, stitch it up, and send someone to a recovery ward.
No, the child still has to go home to that neighborhood or come back to school the very next day.
So the primary skill requires intense, ongoing relational and contextual judgment.
The surgeon can isolate the variable they are working on, but the safeguarding lead is managing this massive web of interacting human dynamics that honestly never fully stabilize.
So in many ways, their job is infinitely more ambiguous than the surgeons,
It really is.
which paradoxically makes these surgical protocols even more essential. Because the external environment is so chaotic and uncontrollable, the internal team structure has to be completely rock solid. The checklists and the briefings are basically the only things keeping the team anchored.
And that synthesis leads us directly into the final section of our source material, which explores the leadership layer.
Right. How do you actually build what the text calls a high-reliability safeguarding team?
It breaks it down into a 3-tiered system: foundations, developmental pathways, and leadership.
And the order of those tiers is vital. You have to start with foundations.
Right. Clear processes, unambiguous policies, and really strong communication systems. This is your baseline safety layer.
Because you can't empower a junior staff member to, speak up bravely if you haven't first built a foundation where doing so won't get them fired or ostracized.
Precisely the point. Once the foundation is secure, then you move to developmental pathways.
Okay, what does that look like?
This is where staff are actively trained to be confident, to understand the thresholds, and to actually practice multi-agency coordination.
So it's the transition from just having rules on a page to having capable people executing them.
Exactly. And finally, you have the leadership tier.
Leadership is the ongoing commitment to the entire cycle. It's the discipline of demanding that pre-incident alignment before rushing into action.
And insisting on post-incident reflection after the dust settles. Leadership ensures the system is continuously learning rather than just continuously reacting.
The text actually culminates in a system-level question that forces you to evaluate your own environment.
It's a great question.
If you are listening to this right now and you're managing a startup or running a community project or leading a department in a massive corporation, ask yourself this question.
Okay.
Before the next critical moment, have we aligned as a team or are we relying on individuals to carry it alone?
It is the ultimate litmus test for a culture. Are you relying on the isolated brilliance and sheer exhaustion of a few dedicated heroes, or do you have a system that actually supports them?
Because the greatest surgeons in the world do not rely on their brilliance alone.
No, they rely on preparation, teamwork, structural safeguards, and relentless reflection.
Not isolated decisions,
Yeah.
not uncoordinated speed, aligned teams.
Yeah.
It completely shifts how you view responsibility.
It really does.
But thinking about all of this, the checklists, the psychological safety, the alignment, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Oh,
Something that takes everything we've discussed today and moves it entirely outside the workplace.
I am intrigued. Where are we taking this?
So we've talked extensively about how essential the post-op debrief is for fixing professional systems, right? Identifying communication breakdowns, learning without blame, analyzing the root cause. What would happen if we applied that exact same structured, blameless debrief to our personal lives?
Wow. Taking a clinical tool into the living room.
Exactly. Imagine having a literal post-op debrief after a major family argument or a failed personal project.
That would be intense.
Sitting down the next day and saying, okay, the emotional crisis is past. Let's not assign blame. Let's look at the system of our relationship.
Where did our communication break down?
Right. What were the hidden assumptions we both made? Was my cognitive load just too high from work to be fully present?
How much faster would our relationships mature and our personal growth accelerate if we analyze the mechanics of the conflict instead of just repeating the exact same argument over and over again?
Applying the concept of a high-reliability team to a marriage or a friendship.
Treating personal friction with the same analytical, team-focused reflection as a surgical unit, that would fundamentally alter the dynamic of how we relate to each other.
Because humans are fallible everywhere, not just when they're on the clock. We all need structural support to navigate the messy realities of life.
Very true.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you. Keep looking for ways to align before you act.
Yeah, and remember, the next time you find yourself in a crisis and you feel that overwhelming surge of adrenaline telling you to just fix it all by yourself.
Just pause, look around the room, and make sure everyone is looking at the same map. See you next time.